right, you did a whole breakdown. The moves that you would make to make the 49ers great again. Make the 49ers great again. I wonder where that
has a good ring to it.
Has a good ring to it. I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe it seems like a powerful slogan that could be a motivator. Anyway, and you point out the gap is not an ocean. They need to retool, they don't need to rebuild. And I'll just run this down. You said hire Robert Saleh as defensive coordinator, fire Brian Schneider as special teams coordinator, hire an OC. In other words, Shanahan doesn't have an OC. He is his de facto OC. But you're saying hire an OC, fresh
kind of
set
like
of
what
eyes.
They had with Mike McDaniel a couple of years ago. Fresh set of eyes on the offense.
Right. Rebuild the offensive line. Goodbye to Banks, Brendel, and McKivitz. Get younger and more depth on the defensive line. Draft a young tight end too. Lenoir and Green are your future cornerback tandem, so you're kissing off Mooney. And then add depth at corner, linebacker, and safety in the draft, probably, or free agency. Let these young wide receivers develop. Get rid of or replace the following players: Deebo, Juice, Mooney, Hargrave, Hufanga, McKivitz, Brendel, Banks, and Campbell. Your comments, please.
Yeah,
I'll say this. As far as get rid of list, I'm with you on every single guy there. I might consider re-signing Banks if Banks was willing to give me a hometown discount just for continuity purposes. I don't like trading out 3 offensive linemen and trying to win the next year. That's challenging. So I guess just continuity-wise, I'd probably keep Banks. If I could keep McKivitz as like a backup, I'd like to keep McKivitz as a backup. Everybody else, Campbell, I mean, literally, I will drive from Walnut Creek to Santa Clara and drive him to San Jose Airport for you guys if you would like. And the other guys, there's some good Niners there, Deebo, Juszczyk, but, shelf life is the milk's gone rancid on both those guys, so they have to go. I agree with your gotta go list. So give me your thoughts on your kind of your to-do list of the offseason.
Yeah, so let me run it down a little bit.
Yeah.
The Niners easily could have 3 more wins this year. And if they had 3 more wins, you're looking at a team that right now is 8-11 instead of 5-6. And so what Bill Belichick said a couple of weeks ago, I'm bringing this back up for context for those of you just joining the show. He was on the Pat McAfee show. And he said that when you lose close games, especially in an ugly manner like the Niners have, they led the Rams, should have won that game. They led the Cardinals, got shut out in the second half, should have won that game. Somehow they pissed it away against the Seattle Seahawks. And when you lose games in that manner, when you have leads with under 2 minutes to go, they're so ugly that you feel as though the team sucks. You have to tear it down, fire Kyle Shanahan. This team is horrible. When in reality, they could have easily won those games. And if they did, they're 8-3. We're not having this conversation right now. You know where 8-3 would get you right now? The number 3 seed in the NFC. And so I don't think the gap is wide. I think it's thin, and that's why I don't think the Niners need to rebuild. For hiring Robert Saleh as defensive coordinator, credit to Kyle Shanahan for at least trying to hire Bill Belichick, trying to bring in one of the best defensive minds all time, but his backup plan was Nick Sorensen, who had never called plays, never been a defensive coordinator, and bringing in Brandon Staley. It was a misfire by Kyle Shanahan. It was a mistake. He can correct that mistake by bringing back Robert Saleh, who gives you leadership, gives you much needed juice and positive energy on the sideline, which right now, this year, this Niners sideline has looked dead. We know that Kyle Shanahan, as the play caller and offensive mind, always kind of has his head in that tablet looking at the offensive plays, what he can do, what he has to call, trying to game plan in that manner. And so I think the Niners need a leader and kind of an assistant head coach on that sideline. And they have to get better on defense. 9 penalties, 77 yards as a team last week against Green Bay. Horrible. How do you even miss 19 tackles against the Packers? And I think you asked Nick Sorensen about that this week. I didn't like his answer. I didn't like his answer after the game in week 2 when you asked him, why did you have George Odom matched up against Justin Jefferson on that 97-yard touchdown? Didn't have an answer there. He's in over his skis. You have to replace him. And I know some people will say, why rehash Robert Saleh? Bring him back. I think we need a new defensive scheme. The scheme still works. Before Robert Saleh was fired, his Jets defenses since 2021, first in points per drive, first in EPA per play, third in success rate. And this team right now is disjointed defensively. They've had scheme breakdowns. They're poorly coached. So that's the thought process there with bringing in Robert Saleh. And Brian Schneider as special teams coordinator, you fire him because he's not getting the job done. Hire an OC to bring in a fresh set of eyes. I would do that and bring in an old former head coach to help Kyle Shanahan with game management. And I think when you think about both those areas, right, I think this offense is a little bit stale. It's a little bit predictable. I think they can get a little bit more creative and a little bit more modern. And that's the thought process of bringing in an OC. And I think Shanahan has missed Mike Macdonald a little bit in that role where he didn't call plays, but he helped him with concepts. And then an older coach can help Shanahan with game management. He's lacking there. Rebuild the offensive line. Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, Colton McKivitz aren't good enough. If Aaron Banks wants to come back at a discounted rate, I would entertain that and hope that this year was a mirage because he's been a pretty solid player prior to this year. Jake Brendel, too weak to be a center, and Colton McKivitz, not a starting caliber right tackle for a team with Super Bowl aspirations. Defensive line depth, Larry, you and I know it's just not good enough, and that's at defensive end and defensive tackle. Diamador Lenoir, Renardo Green, future at corner. You let Charvarius Ward walk. That was signaled when you paid Diamador Lenoir. You just can't afford another cornerback worth $15+ million, and I think Mooney will get that in free agency. I would be willing to bring back George Kittle on an extension beyond 2025, the final year of his deal, but Eric Saubert can't be the backup tight end, nor can Braden Willis. The Niners have whiffed on bringing in a developmental tight end behind Kittle, and I think that you need to get better there and run some more two tight end concepts. You need to add depth just naturally at corner, linebacker, safety, and then you let these young wide receivers develop. And man, I'm very concerned about Brandon Ayuk's knee. I'm not sure if he's ever going to be the same player, but Ricky Pearsall has shown some flashes. Jacob Cowing has as well. And when I say get rid of or replace the following players, like fans are like, Chase, you're such a hater. Why would you get rid of these legends? Look, I just think you need to refresh the roster. You need to change the personnel, change and tinker the scheme a little bit. Deebo Samuel's having the worst year of his career. He has been a massive disappointment since the contract, and Kyle Shanahan force feeds him the football. And so with him having a career worst year, I think it's better to get rid of a player too early as compared to too late. I like Kyle Juszczyk. I think a fullback is valuable in this offense. I don't think you need to pay a fullback $3, $4, $5, $6 million, and you can get one for cheap. I mentioned Ward, why he would walk just because he'd get a bag elsewhere. Javon Hargrave, the signing has been a disaster. He can't stop the run. Talanoa Hufanga, given all the injuries the last 2 years, if he wanted to come back on a one-year deal, I'd explore that. If you look at the numbers since he's been out last year, this Niners defense has really struggled, and I think they miss his instinctual play. And then the three offensive linemen that I mentioned and Devondre Campbell just not good enough. So speeding that up, that's kind of what the thought process is there.
I think you're being way too harsh on Campbell. No, I'm just joking, of course. No, I think you're spot on. I think you're absolutely spot on all these. Let me just go through a couple of them. One, I think you're absolutely totally spot on Robert Saleh. Here's why. Because the Niners like Chris Kasarik, and they want to keep that front. And Robert Saleh might be the only defensive coordinator that they could get that they could bring in a guy who's totally capable, who fits their culture, fits their coaching personality, understands who Kyle is, and understands the talent, the evolution of how they got here. And you wouldn't have to necessarily trade out Chris. You could keep Chris. And if you want to, I mean, I like Chris as a coach. I know the wide nine, some people are for it, some people aren't. To me, it's a very good front as long as you have the dudes. They don't have the dudes right now, so they need the personnel department to go get him dudes. But he still has a great eye for it. I mean, the fact that he spotted Evan Anderson as an undrafted guy was a great find. And Chris, I really believe Chris. I'd like to keep Chris. So you can have continuity on defense and bring in Robert Saleh and give him a big fat check. Pay him handsomely to be the defensive coordinator. So I love that idea. I don't love firing Brian Schneider, but you know what? Sorry. Results, and there weren't enough of them. I do agree with hiring an offensive coordinator I do agree that they're, beyond the date of rebuilding the offensive line. As I said, I kind of like Banks a little bit. I wouldn't mind McKivitz as a backup. Brendel, though, I'm moving on from. And then, to me, the only emphasis I would have different than yours is I really believe that the emphasis has to be at linebacker. You got to go out and find some great linebackers. You had great linebackers. Well, Tampa beat Kansas City in the Super Bowl. Why? They had great linebackers. When you have great linebackers, that's the equalizer. And to me, they got a great eye for it. Johnny Holland is a phenomenal linebacker coach. They found Aziz late. They found Fred Warner on day 2. They found Greenlaw on day 3. There's some really, really good linebackers. So I would try to emphasize finding that difference-making second-level defender for sure. I want to play you Sorensen's answer from the 12 men on the field. We haven't talked about it, but that was the most egregious thing I've seen all year is 12 men on the field in back-to-back snaps. And, of course, Sorensen was asked about it. And tell me if you like this answer. This is the answer that he gave when he was asked about 12 men on the field.
Can you address the 12 men on the field penalties back-to-back?
It's just pure, it's pure communication. I mean, it starts with me. We emphasize, and we have to fix it. We're doing all we can to do it. Starts with nonverbal, then it turns to verbal. Know who's in, know who's out, and what personnel grouping, whether it's nickel base or you go with bigger, more D linemen. I think the first one was more, they were approaching the huddle in a way that, to me it seemed quicker because they had subbed, got to the huddle. And that's something for me, I feel like should be allowed to sub. We're still working through what the exact rules on that are because they subbed late into the huddle. So we, need to be able to sub. That's what there's kind of an argument about it. And then the second one, there's no excuse. There's no excuse. Players, coaches, all of us.
There's no excuse for either of them. 12 men on the field. Can we not fucking count?
Yep.
12, 11, yes. 12 or more, no. Real basic. I hate to say it, but I think it's on Campbell. I think they wanted to go to the dime or the nickel, and they wanted the one linebacker on the field. Campbell was supposed to come out for the extra DB, and he didn't come off. So that, I think, was the problem. But back-to-back consecutive 12 men on the field penalties, I mean, if that doesn't get you fired, what will? I mean, did Steve Wilkes have a back-to-back 12 men on the field penalty in the red zone in a gotta-have-it moment? No. So, I mean, that is just I mean, the only thing I said that he said there that I agree with is that it's on me. Yeah, it's on you. You're the coordinator. Yes, it's on you. So,
yeah,
I mean, they could have had Fangio. No, they wanted Spags. He said no. They wanted Belichick. He said no. But man, they go to Brandon Staley, who, man, look at what you think the Chargers. Is there anybody walking around LA wearing a Chargers t-shirt right now that's like, man, we miss Brandon Staley's defense? He left, and now they're the best defense in football with the same fucking players.
Yep.
So, I mean, all I got to say is, I never, especially around the holidays, it's bad karma to wish for people to lose their jobs. It's bad. Just a bad karma. And I don't like doing it, but it hasn't been good enough on defense. It hasn't been good enough on special teams. And I mean, there was another huge gaffe on special teams, wasn't there, in this last game? I mean, there was a penalty on Saubert. And, I know everybody wants to say, oh, my God, Lynch and Tim Ryan, that was the worst penalty. He had 2 hands full of jersey at the chest plate.
Yep.
Okay. You can grab the chest plate, but you have to do it with like your hands open. If the line judge or the ref behind you sees you have 2 hands full of jersey, you're getting called for it.
Yep. And how about both Ricky Pearsall returns that were called back that were good returns because of penalties?
They cannot do a special teams sequence without a penalty.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, and that's not hyperbole. That's not me being overly crazy. No, that is a fact. Go look at it.